Mainstream academia puts forth the theory that the Great Pyramid at Giza was a tomb for the 4th dynasty Egyptian Pharaoh Khufu, thus making it about 4,500 years old. The archive firmly rejects this theory for the purpose and age of the structure. Simply put, the conventional theory about the Great Pyramid being a tomb is complete nonsense. The Great Pyramid does not contain any of the things a real Egyptian tomb would, such as extravagant artifacts, ornate wall art, sealed entrances, elaborate coffins, or even mummies. The size, design, and view of the finished pyramid were worthy of a god. Its interior was not so much. Many academics argued that the mummified remains of King Khufu were once located inside the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. The king's chamber is entirely faced with granite. Above the roof, which is constructed of 9 slabs of stone weighing in total about 400 tons, are 5 compartments referred to as relieving chambers. Inside the king's chamber, the only object found by experts is a granite sarcophagus, one corner of which is broken. The sarcophagus was of poor finish, unlike the sarcophagi made by the Egyptians, which were precise, large, and intricately finished. In other words, the sarcophagus inside the king's chamber is unworthy of the pyramid, let alone the king. There are no inscriptions whatsoever inside the king's chamber that would tell us anything about it being a tomb. Why was the king's chamber left so poorly decorated? It looks cold, it looks poor, and unworthy of a royal burial chamber. There are no hieroglyphs inside it. There are no markings either. Look at the tomb of Tutankhamun, for example. His tomb is intricately carved, with colorful walls depicting various scenes. Beautifully finished, the tomb of King Tut looks just like what a pharaoh's tomb needs to look like. King Khufu's tomb looks the exact opposite. So, if we do not accept the mainstream theory of the purpose of the Great Pyramid, we are then confronted with the very obvious question: what was it really used for? Well, for a few decades now, a prevailing counter-theory has emerged. The theory that the Great Pyramid was some type of energy generator has become increasingly popular, and more importantly, it has even entered into the academic paradigm by way of theoretical physics. Many of the following theories overlap in certain areas regarding construction materials and construction location. Therefore, our delineation between the theories is based on types of energy output. One of the first people to propose that the Great Pyramid was an actual machine was Edward J. Kunkel in his 1973 book, Pharaoh's Pump. He proposed the Great Pyramid worked like a hydraulic ram pump, forcing water up through the structure out the small shafts via changes in air pressure. The model saw the pyramid as essentially a massive megalithic version of the smaller hydraulic pneumatic water pumps later developed by Heron of Alexandria. Engineer John Cadman tested and modified Kunkel's theory, discovering that the pyramid could work as a vibrational pulse generator via changes in air pressure and water pressure. He argued that as water flooded into the subterranean chamber via the descending passageway, pressure would have increased via granite check valves until a vibrational pulse was released. These pulses translated to a steady rhythm of vertical compression waves that would have propagated up through the structure. Building on these ideas, engineer Chris Dunn proposed the pyramid was a chemical maser system, or microwave laser, in his 1994 book, The Giza Power Plant. It would have used the cyclical compression pulses to transduce sound energy via hollow clay resonators and electromagnetic energy via the piezoelectric effect of the quartz crystals in the granite of the king's chamber. In the meantime, liquid hydrated zinc chloride and dilute hydrochloric acid stored in the shafts of the queen's chamber would have produced hydrogen gas. This would have filled the grand gallery and king's chamber. To complete the process, atmospheric microwave energy would have entered the king's chamber via the north shaft, where it would have been amplified via the hydrogen gas, itself energized via the transduced energy of the vibrational pulses and then emitted via the south shaft as a focused microwave beam. Dunn suspects the Egyptians would have then used the microwave energy to power machines and appliances such as high-speed rock saws. He noted several strange features of the pyramid that seemed to agree with his model, such as the north shaft from the king's chamber, which appeared to him exactly like a waveguide used to direct microwaves. Also, as the hydrogen gas formed in the queen's chamber, impurities would have precipitated out, leading to incrustation of salts on the walls. This was indeed found by early explorers, including Flinders Petrie, who observed this noticeable crust in the queen's chamber and could not explain it. The Great Pyramid of Giza has fascinated us all as it encodes an enormous amount of numerical consequences such as dimensional precision, movement of our planet, speed of light, the golden ratio of pi and phi, etc. In 2007, a biochemical engineer named Peter Grandix presented his study that the Great Pyramid of Giza expresses the key ratio of an AC voltage sine wave as well as ratios of the Fibonacci number. The study reasoned that the shape of the Great Pyramid of Giza could embody a time domain, wideband antenna for atmospheric electrostatic discharge impulse. It found that the pyramidal antenna modeled on the Great Pyramid of Giza can couple into the atmosphere and transfer the power of the ESD impulses into a novel lumped element resonant circuit that converts the random impulses into a regular series of exponentially decaying sinusoidal wave trains. Thus, electrostatic discharge impulses can be transformed into an alternating current of predictable frequency. This system could become a source of renewable electric power by utilizing the atmospheric electrostatic energy. He also proposed that the generation of electricity would be commercially practical even in the absence of thunderstorm generators. As the charge accumulating capacity of the pyramid is directly proportional to its surface area, a sufficiently large pyramid could potentially generate megawatts of power even under fair weather conditions. The Great Pyramid of Giza was once covered in white polished limestone referred to as casing stones. The stones fit together so perfectly that they would have given the pyramid smooth, flawless sides. This would have made the giant structures brightly reflect the sun like a mirror. It also would have made the inside of the structure perfectly insulated. The material dolomite was used on the inner surfaces of the pyramid. Dolomite is known to increase electrical conductivity directly relative to the amount of pressure on it. High pressure creates more electrical current. Lining the passageways and underground tunnels of the pyramid is granite, which is slightly radioactive. Granite contains high amounts of quartz crystal with metal, and it is a well-known conductor of piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity occurs as a result of stress or pressure on the quartz, as demonstrated by quartz wristwatches, which can be charged simply by shaking them. The granite actually ionizes the air inside the pyramid, creating a chemical reaction, which again increases the conductivity of electricity. When such electrons are given the chance to bypass sections of rock via metal wire, quite large currents can flow. If granite was not chosen for its electrical conductivity, we must ask, why else would the Egyptians use it? It has certainly stood the test of time, no matter which version of history you believe, the conventional one that says it was built 4,500 years ago, or unconventional versions, which say it could be as old as 20,000 years. The amount of work involved staggers the imagination. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth, so working it would have taken at least 10 times as long as building the pyramid out of limestone as they did the Sphinx. Limestone was also a more logical choice because it was abundant on the Giza Plateau. In 1993, a mysterious and inaccessible room was discovered after remaining hidden for thousands of years. Appearing to have been deliberately concealed by the structure's engineers, the room came to be called the Queen's Chamber and was finally explored in 2011 with a small remote camera to reveal a carefully crafted copper wire. More importantly, there were instructions painted as symbols onto the floor which appeared to show a clear wiring diagram. Any battery, from those used in large power plants to the smallest pellet batteries in wristwatches, requires a metal, such as copper, to create the chemical reaction known as potential difference. You can run an electric current through copper wire, and the coil will produce a short-range magnetic field. Add a second coil, and the power is transferred from one coil to the other. A windowless room with copper wirings could create a higher potential on one wall, which transfers energy to the lower potential on the other wall, consequently releasing electromagnetic energy into the confined space of the so-called Queen's Chamber. Sadly, these wires have since disappeared entirely, and mainstream Egyptologists claim there is no functionality to this room whatsoever. They also claim there is no functionality of anything in the pyramid beyond the ways it serves as a tomb. It could still be argued that the electrical materials used to construct the Great Pyramid are purely coincidental, because an energy generator still requires a catalyst from another source. Perhaps this explains why the pyramids are geographically located over a powerful natural generator, underground rivers, and aquifers. Piezoelectricity could be harnessed from the power of the current as the water flows, and it has been proven that thousands of years ago the Nile River ran straight past the pyramids. This brings into debate the age of the pyramids themselves. The weathering on the pyramids and on the nearby Sphinx indicates the monuments are actually double the age they are currently assumed to be, if not more. So, if water was the source of power, it would have traveled up the limestone based on the principle of capillary action, which happens when a small area of a substance that gets wet absorbs into the entire area of that substance. The tunnel leading down from the bottom of the pyramid could have tapped into the aquifer, channeling the water up into the pyramid through a series of tunnels. So, water flowing near or underneath the pyramid could have been absorbed as it passed over the limestone, even traveling upward to the top of the structure. The quartz and the tunnels of the pyramids would have been subject to the stress of the vibration, creating piezoelectricity. The high force speed and the pressure of the rising water would be analogous to filling a syringe, generating electromagnetic energy within the structure by the materials within it, and conducting it upwards to the now missing capstone. The Great Pyramid is located at the exact point which magnifies the electromagnetic forces on the planet where telluric currents are at their strongest. There is an electromagnetic field at the bottom of the pyramid which would rise to the upper layers with these chemical reactions. We do not know for sure what capped the pyramid, but there's speculation that it may have been gold, explaining why it was the first thing to go missing. If it was indeed gold, this could have created a conductive path for energy to be directed upwards, high into the ionosphere. The Great Pyramid may in fact have been a form of Tesla Tower, constructed 10,000 years or more before Nikola Tesla built his own tower in 1903. Tesla claimed that at 30,000 feet altitude there is a stratum of rarefied air that would conduct electric currents at high voltages. In this proposed system there was a transmitter, the Tesla Tower, which would transmit millions of volts into the atmosphere. Then he had something, a rod in the ground, with a few special modifications that would receive the energy and reduce the voltage to a potential that could be used by consumers. Unfortunately, Tesla's work was funded by J.P. Morgan, who was an oil and gas tycoon who dominated the electricity industry in the 1900s. Morgan correctly saw Tesla's tower as a threat to his business, as it would have meant free electricity for everyone, and used all of his money and influence to ruin Tesla. This is where the obelisks come into play. With quartz stones on top of them, the obelisks could have acted as receivers, just like Tesla's specially modified rods. Like the pyramids themselves, the obelisks were made of granite, were huge and heavy, and would have been extremely difficult to carve, move, and transport from the quarry at Aswan, 500 miles away, So it's highly unlikely they were created merely for religious or decorative purposes. In all, the Egyptians created 28 obelisks, so it would have been a massive undertaking. Most are now fallen and only 8 remain standing in Egypt today. However, there are also standing Egyptian obelisks in Istanbul, Rome, London, Paris, and New York. It has been suggested these were stolen from Egypt, but considering that even the lightest obelisk weighed 110 tons, they varied considerably in both size and weight, up to a maximum weight of 323 tons. This begs the question, who would go to the trouble of transporting such a heavy object thousands of kilometers just to steal a huge block of stone for decorative purposes? It seems more likely the original builders of the Great Pyramid were in the process of setting up a global power distribution network that was either never completed or completed and then destroyed thousands of years ago. In his book, From Gravitons to Galaxies, author Greg Wilson presents the theory that the Great Pyramid of Giza was in fact a nuclear fission reactor. It is proposed that the Great Pyramid was a plutonium mill. The internal geometry of the pyramid is given correspondence to the process steps of breeding plutonium, separating plutonium from other material, disposing of radioactive waste, using water, and producing hydroelectric power. Wilson addresses the practical value of plutonium and the economic justification of the pyramid. He also argues that other pyramids were later attempts by the Egyptians to recreate the power and value of the Great Pyramid. Wilson even puts forth scientific methods for testing whether or not nuclear fission occurred within the pyramid. In July 2018, it was announced that physicists researched how the Great Pyramid would interact with the electromagnetic waves of a resonant length. Calculations showed that in the resonant state, the pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers as well as under its base, where the third unfinished chamber is located. These conclusions were derived on the basis of numerical modeling and analytical methods of physics. The researchers first estimated that resonances in the pyramid can be induced by radio waves with a length ranging from 200 to 600 meters. Then they made a model of the electromagnetic response of the pyramid and calculated the extinction cross-section. This value helps to estimate which part of the incident wave energy can be scattered or absorbed by the pyramid under resonant conditions. Finally, for the same conditions, the scientists obtained the electromagnetic field distribution inside the pyramid. As we can see, the theory of the Great Pyramid having a specific purpose related to electricity has reached all the way to the academic field of theoretical physics and even applied physics for that matter. The archive produced a full-length presentation on this news release back in August of 2018, and a link to that video is in the description. So, in closing, as we look at each of the theories presented here, we see examples of how science itself is breaking through the dogmas and mandated historical paradigm of mainstream archaeologists and Egyptologists. The majority of academia still consider it an outlandish concept that the Great Pyramid was a power generator of one sort or another. But here is a simple fact that the academics will never acquiesce. The theory of the Great Pyramid of Giza being a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu is even more outlandish. As we stated before, there is quite a bit of overlap between the various theories, and thus it is likely that the true answer is an amalgamation of all of them. Wouldn't it be great if we had some contemporaneous records to help solve the mystery? How awesome would it be to find temple inscriptions, ancient texts, and other references that would help decipher the real purpose of the Great Pyramid? In such material, we might very well find out that this structure was not simplified to a single-use apparatus. Indeed, we may find out that it actually had multiple purposes. Well, it just so happens that those temple inscriptions and ancient texts do in fact exist. and they explain in depth the purpose of the Great Pyramid and its role in ancient wars to control the domain of Earth. That story is explained in the archive's next presentation, Enki versus Enlil, the Pyramid Wars.